All right, let's dive into Petrocelli. I think this is one you'll find really interesting. We've got a lot to go on today with TV tropes and Wikipedia, and even a review from Television Heaven. So I think we can give a pretty good overview of the show for you. And honestly, when I was looking into this one, I gotta say I was pretty surprised. This Harvard lawyer ends up in the Arizona desert. Like, what's that about?
Yeah, you don't see that every day.
No, not really. And then on top of that, there's this whole thing about his house that never gets finished. It's pretty strange.
It really makes you wonder what the creators were going for with that, doesn't it? Like, maybe it's more than just a funny quirk, you know?
Yeah, good point. So, okay, let's back up for a sec. Where did this show even come from? Where did Petrocelli start?
Well, he actually started in a movie back in 1970.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was called The Lawyer, and it was kind of based on that Sam Shepard case, you know, the one...
Oh, yeah, wasn't that the inspiration for The Fugitive?
Exactly, that's the one. So, I mean, right from the start, he's connected to this big legal drama from real life.
Huh, interesting. So he starts in a movie, but then how does he make the jump to TV?
He gets another shot in a TV movie called Night Games.
Okay.
And that's where we meet his wife, Maggie, and his investigator, Pete. It's like the core team you see in the series later.
Oh, I see. So it's kind of like a backdoor pilot.
Yeah, you could say that.
Okay, cool. So we have the movie, then the TV movie.
Yeah.
But why the Arizona desert? Why would this Harvard lawyer end up there?
That's where it gets interesting, right? I mean, it's such a different setting than you'd expect for a legal drama. It's not the usual big city with fancy courtrooms and all that. It's like he's rejecting all that and choosing this small town, San Remo. And I think that really reflects what was going on in the 70s, you know, that whole anti-establishment vibe.
Yeah, totally. It's like he's trading in his suit for a cowboy hat.
Well, maybe not a cowboy hat, but the show does play with those contrasts visually, like in the opening credits. You see Tony and Maggie driving their pickup truck through the desert. It just sets the scene immediately.
Oh, right. So it's not just that he's different. It's that he's chosen to be in this different world. So tell me about Petrocelli as a lawyer. Is he your typical, buttoned-up attorney?
Oh, not at all. He's described as rough and ready in some of the articles I read. Like, he breaks traffic laws, he bends the rules, and he doesn't care who he annoys as long as he feels like his client is getting a fair shot. There's even this thing about him using a fake evidence sign to get the best parking spots.
What, really?
Yeah. I thought that was pretty funny. He sounds more like a cop than a lawyer.
He really does. You know what he kind of reminds me of? He's like that maverick cop character that was so popular back then.
That's a great comparison. He's definitely got that rebel hero thing going on. He's fighting for the underdog, even if it means going up against the whole system.
Yeah, I get that. So he's out there fighting the good fight. And he's got Maggie by his side through it all. Tell me a little more about their dynamic. What's their relationship like?
I think they have a really great partnership. It's clear they love and respect each other. She's his rock, She brings a lot of warmth to the show and balances out his rough edges. You can tell they have this really strong bond, and it's not just about the cases. It's about their life together, how they support each other.
That's cool. It adds a whole other layer to the show.
Yeah.
Right? It's not just about the law. It's about their relationship, too. Okay, but what about the cases themselves? Is there a typical Petrocelli formula? How does he approach them?
Oh, yeah, there's definitely a formula. It's actually pretty clever. Each episode starts with a case that seems like open and shut, His client looks totally guilty.
Okay.
But then we get these flashbacks from all these different points of view, like the prosecution, the client, the witnesses. And those flashbacks, they start to unravel the truth of what really happened.
Ooh, that's cool. It reminds me of Rashomon. Have you ever seen that movie?
Yes. Exactly like Rashomon. It's all about perspective, right? Each person sees the same event, but their interpretation is different.
Right. And so Petrocelli uses those different perspectives to challenge what everyone thinks they know.
Yeah. And as those flashbacks unfold, he starts to uncover newer evidence challenge assumptions, and eventually he presents his own version of events, and it often turns the whole case upside down.
Wow. So like a big plot twist every episode.
Pretty much. And I think that's what keeps you hooked. You're always guessing what really happened and how Petrocelli's going to figure it out.
No, so it's not your average courtroom drama. It's got this whole mystery element to it.
Exactly. And I think it's one of the things that makes the show so unique.
Okay, so before we move on, we got to talk about this unfinished house. Why is this such a big deal in the show?
It becomes like a running gag throughout the whole series. They're living in this trailer on their property while the house is supposed to be getting built.
Yeah.
But it never seems to get done. They even start laying the foundation in the opening credits.
Right. I noticed that. So is it just a funny quirk? Or is there something more to it?
Honestly, I think it works on a few different levels. On one hand, it's funny, right? But I also think it represents something deeper, this idea of striving for something better, for justice, but never quite reaching it. Just like the struggle for justice in the legal system itself, it's ongoing.
Wow, that's a really interesting way to look at it. It's like this visual metaphor that runs through the entire series.
Exactly. And it adds another layer of complexity to Tony and Maggie's personal lives. It's this contrast to their professional successes.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Okay, so we've got this lawyer who's a bit of a rebel fighting for justice in a system that's often stacked against him, all while trying to build a life with his wife in the desert. And their house is never finished.
That's Petrocelli in a nutshell.
It's definitely a unique show. So did it resonate with audiences? Was it a hit? It sounds like a really interesting show. So did it resonate with audiences? Was it a hit?
Yeah, it definitely found its audience, especially in the UK, actually. It became kind of a cult classic over there. I even read that Terry Wogan, the TV host, you know him?
Yeah.
He was joking about trying to raise money to finish the Petrocelli house like a fundraiser.
That's hilarious. It really seems like the show struck a chord with people.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the people behind the scenes. Who were the creative minds that brought Petrocelli to life?
Well, one of the key figures was Leonard Katzman. He actually produced both the original movie and the series.
Right.
And he went on to produce Dallas later on. You know that show?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Dallas was huge.
Exactly. So he knew what he was doing when it came to TV.
And speaking of big names, Petrocelli had some pretty impressive guest stars too, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's a really impressive list, like William Shatner,
Wow.
Susan Day, Harrison Ford. It's like a who's who of 1970s Hollywood.
It makes you wonder what drew them to the show,
I think it was probably the unique premise and the characters. Petrocelli offered something different from the typical legal drama. It had this blend of legal intrigue and social commentary, but also this genuine heart. And I think that probably appealed to actors who were looking for more complex roles.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it sounds like it was a breeding ground for great storytelling. Did our sources mention any particularly memorable episodes or storylines?
There's one that really sticks out. It's where a witness accuses Petrocelli himself of bribery.
Whoa, hold on. So it's not just his clients who are in trouble.
Nope, this time he's the one in the hot seat.
That's a twist. So how does he get out of that one?
Well, it puts him in a tough spot, right? Because he needs legal help himself. Kind of ironic for a lawyer.
Yeah.
So this young attorney steps in to defend him, but then the case takes another turn.
Oh no, what happened?
It turns out the witness was actually telling the truth about seeing a murder,
What?
but she insists that Petrocelli's client is the killer. And get this.
He really did it.
He did.
Yeah.
So Petrocelli's basically been framed for bribery while defending a guilty client.
That is wild. Talk about a moral dilemma.
Right. I mean, it really highlights the tough choices that lawyers sometimes have to make. Petrocelli's committed to defending his client, but what happens when you find out they're actually guilty? It's complicated.
Yeah, that's heavy stuff. It's a good example of how Petrocelli goes beyond just the courtroom drama. It explores these deeper questions about justice and the gray areas of the legal system. It's not just about winning or losing. It's about the human impact.
Absolutely. And there's another episode that deals with similar themes. It's where Petrocelli's own investigator, Pete Ritter, gets accused of murder.
Oh, wow. So the tables are turned?
Yeah, exactly. It turns out someone was blackmailing Pete's girlfriend, and he becomes the prime suspect.
So Petrocelli has to defend his own friend and partner.
That's right. It adds a whole other layer of emotional complexity to the case, right?
Definitely. So we're seeing these cases that are full of twists and turns, but they're also delving into these deeper themes about loyalty, justice, the personal toll that the legal system can take on everyone involved.
Exactly. It's not just about who wins or loses in court. It's about the human cost.
And then there's that episode where Maggie's uncle gets mixed up in a murder investigation.
Oh, right. He was visiting them in San Remo.
Yeah, and it just shows how crime and suspicion can touch anyone, even the people closest to the law.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that no one is immune to the reach of the legal system.
Okay, now before we move on, I have to ask about something I read on TV tropes. Apparently Barry Newman was often shirtless in the show.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Like a lot.
Well, it was the 70s, standards were different back then.
Yeah, true. But do you think there was more to it than that? Or was it just a product of its time?
It probably played into that whole rebellious heartthrob image that Barry Newman had as Petrocelli. He wasn't afraid to break the mold both in his legal tactics and his personal style.
So it was like another way of challenging convention?
Exactly. And let's be honest, it probably didn't hurt his appeal for some viewers.
Yeah,
But of course, the show's substance and impact go far beyond any of those superficial elements.
of course. So we've talked about the show's origins, its unique approach to storytelling, its thought-provoking themes, and even some of its more revealing aspects. Sadly, though, they didn't last forever. What happened with the show's cancellation?
Yeah, it's a bummer. It feels like Petrocelli had so much potential, but it got cut short after just 2 seasons. What happened? Why was it canceled?
Well, it seems like a few things kind of conspired against it. For one, the ratings were going down in that second season, and there was also a pretty noticeable shift in the storylines. They started to focus more on action, and maybe that alienated some of the viewers who liked the legal drama aspect.
Yeah, maybe they were trying to compete with all those cop shows that were really popular back then. You know, all car chases and explosions.
It's possible.
Yeah.
And it's too bad because Petrocelli really had its own unique voice and perspective on the legal world, you know? It wasn't just another cop show in a courtroom.
Right. And to make things even worse, some of those final episodes never even aired properly. I read that they only made it to reruns. Yeah, that's right. It must have been frustrating for the fans who are waiting for new episodes.
Yeah, I can imagine. So it sounds like Petrocelli was a victim of the TV industry. You know, sometimes even good shows get lost in the shuffle.
That's true. But even though it ended too soon, it left a lasting impact. It paved the way for a new kind of legal hero, you know, one who wasn't afraid to go against the grain and fight for the underdog.
And that's a message that's still relevant today. So Petrocelli might be gone, but it's not forgotten. Looking back on everything we've talked about, what do you think is the most important takeaway from this deep dive?
I think it's a reminder that justice is never really finished. It's not a destination, it's a journey. And Petrocelli, with all its legal battles and twists and turns, really reflects that. It's a reminder that one person can make a difference even when the odds are stacked against them.
It's a pretty inspiring message. It makes you think about the lawyers and advocates who are fighting those battles in the real world every day. You know, the ones who are standing up for what's right.
Exactly. Petrocelli might be fiction, but it draws inspiration from real-life struggles. And it reminds us that the fight for justice is never truly over.
Okay, so before we wrap things up, I want to pose a hypothetical. What if, instead of getting canceled after 2 seasons, Petrocelli had kept going? Like, what if it had become a TV institution? How do you think it would have evolved?
Oh, that's a great question. It's fun to think about how the show would have tackled the changing times. You know, like what if they had addressed things like civil rights or environmental law or even the rise of the internet?
Can you imagine Petrocelli going up against a tech giant? Or a case involving online privacy?
Right. It would have been fascinating to see how he'd navigate those new challenges.
What about the characters? Would Tony and Maggie have finally finished that house?
Who knows? Maybe they would become empty nesters. Their daughters would have grown up and gone off to college.
And what about Pete? Would he still be rocking those cowboy boots? Or would he have traded them in for something more modern?
Ooh, I like to think he'd still be wearing the boots.
Me too. They're iconic.
Yeah.
So even though Petrocelli had a relatively short run, its impact is undeniable. It gave us a memorable character, it challenged our assumptions about the legal system, and it entertained us with its unique blend of drama and wit.
It really did. And it left us with some important questions to think about. Questions about justice, loyalty, and doing the right thing, even when it's hard.
And those questions are still just as relevant today as they were back in the 70s. So if you're looking for a show that's both entertaining and thought-provoking, we highly recommend checking out Petrocelli.
You won't regret it.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Petrocelli. It's been a pleasure sharing this journey with you. We'll see you next time for another deep dive into a topic we know you'll find fascinating.
Until then, keep exploring and keep learning.